Ruthless lawyer mocks widow in court. What she reveals next shocks the judge. Evelyn Carter stood frozen in the middle of the courtroom, her late husband's battered briefcase clutched tightly to her chest. Her palms were clammy, her pulse racing, and every instinct screamed at her to back down. But she couldn't. Daniel wouldn't have wanted her to. Across the room, Marcus Holloway, the infamous lawyer, known for dismantling his opponents with a smug grin and a razor-sharp tongue, leaned back in his chair. No proof, he sneered, his voice dripping with derision. Just another desperate widow trying to cling to something she doesn't deserve. For months, Evelyn had endured whispers behind her back, sleepless nights, and the relentless weight of doubt. But now, with trembling hands and a heart full of resolve, she set the briefcase on the judge's desk. "Your Honor," she said, her voice steady. "For the first time that day, I have evidence that will change everything." Everything. A gasp rippled through the silent courtroom. And for the first time, Holloway's smirk wavered. From the quiet suburbs of Seattle to this pivotal moment, Evelyn's journey had been one of resilience, betrayal, and a widow's fight for truth. As she opened the briefcase and revealed an envelope hidden within, the air in the room thickened with anticipation. What lay inside had the power to shatter lies and expose a web of deception. Could it bring justice, or would it only deepen the chaos? The courtroom held its breath. Evelyn Carter hadn't imagined she would end up here, standing in a courtroom filled with strangers, her hands trembling as she clutched Daniel's old briefcase. The sharp scent of polished wood and the low murmur of voices blurred together. But her focus was fixed on two men seated across the room. Victor Carter, Daniel's estranged brother, wore an expression of smug confidence, while Marcus Holloway, the notorious attorney, exuded calm arrogance, every fiber of Evelyn's being told her they thought they had already won. She tightened her grip on the case, as if it were the only thing tethering her to courage. She couldn't fail Daniel. Now the judge's voice cut through her thoughts, calling the room to order. "Your Honor, my client has been unfairly accused by Mrs. Carter, who seeks to benefit from a fraudulent claim. There is no evidence to support her case." His gaze fell on Evelyn, sharp and dismissive. The spectators murmured, and Evelyn felt her chest tighten, but she forced herself to breathe. Her late husband's briefcase held more than memories that carried the truth. It had been 6 long months since Daniel's tragic accident, a rainy night that had shattered her world. As she pieced her life together, Victor emerged like a storm, contesting Daniel's will and accusing her of forgery. Evelyn had been blindsided, dragged into a legal battle she didn't ask for, but she refused to back down. Daniel's will, signed and notarized, was clear. Everything was hers, yet Victor's claims, bolstered by Holloway's relentless attacks, had chipped away at her confidence. At home, the briefcase had sat untouched in the corner, a reminder of Daniel she hadn't been ready to face until that night. The storm outside had mirrored her grief, thunder rumbling. As she finally opened the case, inside, among blueprints and old letters, she found an envelope tucked into a hidden pocket. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the letter. Daniel's handwriting was unmistakable. His words were filled with love and an urgency she hadn't expected. Daniel had documented everything: Victor's debts, his schemes, and evidence of betrayal. He had feared this very scenario and left behind the proof she would need. That letter reignited her resolve. Now, standing in court, Evelyn summoned every ounce of courage. She stepped forward, her voice steady but soft. "Your Honor, I have evidence that will expose the truth." Her words hung in the air like a challenge. The courtroom fell silent as she placed the envelope on the judge's desk. Holloway's confidence faltered for a fraction of a second, but his sneer returned. "This is absurd," he scoffed. "Just another baseless attempt to waste the court's time." The judge adjusted his glasses, examining the envelope with meticulous care. The tension in the room was palpable, every eye on the desk. As he opened it, Evelyn held her breath, her fingers clenching tightly at her sides. When the judge finally spoke, his tone was measured. "This document changes everything." The courtroom erupted in whispers, and Victor shot to his feet. "This is a lie," he shouted, his face flushed with anger. "She's making it all up." Holloway placed a hand on his client's arm, urging him to sit, but his own composure was cracking. Evelyn remained silent, her gaze unwavering. She had expected their denial, their accusations, but she refused to let them intimidate her. As the court recessed, Evelyn stepped into the hallway, her heart pounding. Henry Blake, the retired lawyer who had been helping her, approached with a reassuring smile. "You did well in there," he said, his voice calm. "Daniel would be proud." She nodded, but her thoughts were racing. She had delivered the evidence, yet she knew this fight was far from over. That night, Evelyn returned home to find the front door slightly ajar. Her breath hitched as she stepped inside. Drawers were pulled open, papers scattered across the floor. Panic surged as she rushed to her bedroom. The closet door was ajar, and Daniel's briefcase, her lifeline, was gone. A creak from the back of the house froze her in place. Grabbing a heavy rolling pin from the kitchen, she crept toward the sound. "Who's there?" she called, her voice shaking, but determined. A figure emerged from the shadows, a man in black, clutching the Briefcase, their eyes locked for a tense moment before he bolted for the back door. Stop, Evelyn shouted, chasing him, but he was gone, disappearing into the night with everything she had fought for. She sank to the FL, her hands trembling as tears streamed down her face. The police arrived 20 minutes later, but the damage was done. Whoever had taken the briefcase knew exactly what they were looking for. The next morning, Evelyn and Henry searched Daniel's workshop, her last hope for answers, dust covered every surface, the room untouched since his death. As she sifted through his tools, her fingers brushed against the locked cabinet. Inside, she found another envelope thick with documents. Daniel had left backups. Relief mixed with determination. As she realized she still had a chance in court, she presented the new evidence. But Holloway was relentless. He introduced forged document M and hired a private investigator to discredit her. The trial became a battle of wits and willpower, with every small victory met by another challenge. Through it all, Evelyn clung to Daniel's letter, his words a reminder to stay strong. Henry's unwavering support kept her grounded as they dismantle Holloway's lies one by one. Finally, after weeks of grueling testimony, the jury reached a verdict. Victor's face was ashen, his bravado shattered, while Holloway sat motionless, his reputation in ruins. Justice had prevailed. Months later, Evelyn stood in her garden, Daniel's letter in her hand. The stars above seemed brighter, the air lighter. Thank you, Daniel, she whispered, for trusting me, pour believing in me. The fight had been brutal, but she had honored his memory, and that she knew was worth everything. Evelyn stood in her garden, the soft evening breeze carrying the scent of blooming flowers in her hand. She held Daniel's letter, the words that had guided her through the darkest days of her life. As she looked up at the stars, she felt something she hadn't in months: peace. The courtroom battles, the threats, and the betrayal had tested her in ways she never imagined, but they had also revealed the strength she didn't know she possessed. Daniel's love had always been her anchor, but now she realized it was also her legacy to protect. Through this journey, Evelyn learned that truth might bend under pressure, but it never breaks. It took courage to fight for what was right, even when the odds seemed impossible. Victor's schemes, Holloway's lies, and the dangers she faced weren't just obstacles, they were moments that shaped her resilience and deepened her resolve. She had fought not just for justice, but for the life and love she and Daniel had built together. As she placed the letter back in its envelope and tucked it into her pocket, Evelyn turned toward her home with renewed purpose. Life would never be the same, but that was okay. She had found herself in the struggle, and that was a victory no one could take away. If Evelyn's story inspired you, help new Shoaib Buzzer stories continue to share tales of strength and perseverance. Like, share, and subscribe to help us reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers. Let's make sure more stories like Evelyn's are never forgotten.